Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, everybody, and we have Miss Tori in the house first. John and Jen, good to see you. Awesome. Hi, K-Heads. Thanks, you guys. Emperor Rex, good to see you.
Good to see everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, fun topics. There's so much going on right now. The world is just a mess. Yet, progress is being made. What exactly is that progress, though? Is it in revealing just how manipulative everything has been here? And that everything we've been taught has been just salesmanship?
Well, we're going to try to figure it out tonight. And good to see you, Miss Jill Anderson, Ben Schultz, Tatarian Vagabond. Yay, Zeno! Good to see you.
Great to see everybody. Thank you guys so much for coming. May you all be blessed, happy, peaceful, and free, and kept safe in these turbulent times.
Yes, we all need to keep watching out for each other because it's a very unusual time out there right now. Hi, Robbie, Annie Lou, Miss Diana, good to see you. That rhymed.
Yeah, that worked out well. Boy, it just got so cold. These extremes, we go from 80-something degrees, like 81, I think, to, just it's going to be like 30 overnight. It's just cold, kind of crazy. Extremes, that's what we have.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. Miss Susan Donahue, good evening from the San Francisco coast. I bet you it's beautiful and more beautiful, but maybe cold.
Well, lots of places are going through chaotic extremes, and Earth, she's going through a lot of chaotic extremes. Please do make sure you guys still are subscribed. Thumbs up is appreciated. If you're able to hype, that always helps as we go against the algorithms. What are the algorithms really geared for? I think they're geared for polarity, and they're geared towards anything that's going to divide us more. Anything that jumps us into one side or the other can be useful to the system.
Yeah, it likes chaos. And Miss Shelley from Western Australia. Oh, we just love our Australia folk. Vildan Ottman, thank you so much. I just turned 40 on March 14th, and it was super quiet in Chicago that day. Well, what a blessed day. Thank goodness you're there. That's wonderful. 40 is such an amazing age. It's really a pivotal age, actually 42, but you could feel things really shifting at age 40. That's something I've learned from Vedic astrology. It's just, it's a time in your life where you kind of rebuild yourself, you renew yourself, and a lot of things that you like maybe fall away, and you find out you like new things, and you have to travel and go get those things. So 40 is fun. Glad you're there.
Yeah, I think I found myself at 42. It was where I had to just totally change my life because I wasn't doing what the higher self had set out for me to do. 42, that might be really where adulthood really truly comes in more ways than one. So much of our lives are run by hormones. You all know how it is if you have teenagers. You got kids going through the change, and the hormones are running everything. Can be very disconcerting and hard to be focused and really insightful. So when we hit that 40-ish area, yeah, it's a blessing. I really do think. But at the same time, we got to recognize we are now in a new age. We are in a new era. The Bronze Age, 40. Maybe that 40 is going to relate to 5 years old in the bigger scheme of things in the Bronze Age, at least from the perspective of longevity. Because I do think that we're going to be having all sorts of amazing understanding, knowledge, information, and technology that will be coming out. And I do think we get through the bumpy road of the years that are right here, right now, and maybe the next, 5 to 15. Then it'll start to go to a much more positive place. Right now, it's just, you could see the illusion's been exposed. It's doing all it can to keep everybody on their heels, again, through nonstop threats of war and rumor of wars. But yes, war is one of the most predominant tools of the dark matrix. John and Jen, I will turn 42 this year. Yes, we are here for you, absolutely. And thank you, Jen. We have seen both John and Jen and worked with both John and Jen, and they are a blessing. And what beautiful hearts.
They are. They really, really are. And Miss Zeno as well, and Susan as well. I mean, it just feels so good to have you guys with us for so long. And there's our wonderful KK. Good to see you. Glad you could be here. Yeah, it's just all these people you build relationships with, and you grow with them, and you learn from them. And Robbie,
Robbie will be too.
Robbie will be too. I mean, it's a really interesting time.
And Robbie's another one. So so many of you guys are in that same bracket, and you're really coming into your own. It's just fabulous. It's great. And I think the biggest blessing is, I remember my grandmother at 70. 70 when she was. When I was a little kid, that just seemed like so ancient. But now, 70 doesn't seem ancient. I'm going to be 61 in just a few more months. I don't feel like there's anything I could have done at 30 that I can't do now. Really.
I know, and we just keep getting better. I'm feeling better. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm doing a thing right now, and I'm letting go of. I do take in some of the organic sugars, just fruit and stuff that's a little sugary, but I'm putting it all aside now because I want to see my body function without it. I'm on my second day. The first day was really, really hard, and this morning was difficult, but I already feel my energy revving up now, and I feel my body lighter and cleaner. So that's really exciting, just to see what your body can do when you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. Robbie stays safe. He says trees are getting knocked down everywhere, all soaking wet, and snow coming down with a nor'easter. I do think we're going to really get into some intense earth change stuff now. And not that we haven't been, because it has been, but I do think it's going to increase. And then we were wondering about the Schumann. Let us take a peek. I know it was whiting out yesterday for a while. Okay, it's calming down a little bit. We had pretty good whiteout there on the 15th. Coming down a little bit right now. KP is pretty low. X-ray, we had M-class flare in the last 24 hours and a C-class flare. I've seen it more chaotic than that, but there is enough chaos to go around. Here you have President Trump saying, what everybody's been thinking. He's considering taking Cuba next. I do believe I'll have the honor of taking Cuba. That's a big honor, taking Cuba in some form. They have no money, they have no oil, they have nothing, but they have nice landscape. It's a beautiful island, and I think they have great people. Yeah, absolutely. I really do feel horribly for all the suffering that Cuba has gone through. Their power grid has completely collapsed now after a big blockade on the island. It's Mad Max in Cuba. It literally is. There's no power in there at all now. Granted, you're not going to freeze to death because, it's always pretty much in the 70s or 80s for the most part. Maybe sometimes jumping up into the 90s, I'm sure. Yet, this is the benefit of being in a tropical place is, you're not threatened with life-threatening cold weather that can just kill you in minutes. But, certainly in a big place like this, big city like Havana, and there is no power, it's just chaos. And that's what this whole system has done. It's just, instead of working together, realizing we need to work together to lift ourselves up, all the system ever does is divide us. It just pits us left against the right, conservative, against liberal. Again, whether it's communism or capitalism, it's all different means of division.
It is, and that's so sad that these people are probably struggling to do simple things like bathe and just simple comforts, and that's not nice. And in a world like this, we really need to stick together more than ever. We're all, us and everyone in the room, I kind of feel we're all like little awkward ducks, and we need to work together to help each other, because the world that's out there, those who are not aware of certain things that are happening, they don't understand us, because I think they feel maybe we're just too out there. We're too out there for them, and that makes them uncomfortable. And nothing against them, they're just not there yet. I get it. I was at that spot too, where I couldn't believe certain things that I was hearing, but I couldn't turn away from them.
They had a protest, which was rare, even with all the chaos. I forget what the gentleman's name was. He has a travel channel. He goes all over the place. He was in Cuba, and he was even in some of the worst areas of Cuba. And, he was saying, this is one of the worst neighborhoods in your area, because it doesn't really feel threatening. People, in fact, they might not have a lot, but it feels pretty good. I think in many ways, they're being prepared for what we're all going to be hit with at some point in time, which is power outages. We're going to go through blackouts, technology blackouts. I think they're going to just become more and more common. And at some point when the sun gets really, really active, we probably won't have any power grid up at some point in time. Of course, when you have hospitals that can't work on people or keep the power going, et cetera, it certainly makes things challenging. But at the same time, I bet you is causing people to pull together.
Well, that's what we're going to have to do. We're just going to have to figure out ways to work with each other, or even be kind, to send each other positive energy, just be there whenever we have an issue, to the best of your ability. Everyone has their limits, and, we all have things to do, but when someone is struggling or someone is suffering, just tell them, hey, I'm sorry, and I get it, and that sucks, but things are going to get better.
Yeah, and I do think this unusual cold wave is I'm in agreement. It's to kill gardens, early planting, the trees and bushes and stuff that's starting to grow. It's to try to nip them in the bud. Again, this world system is not one that supports life. It doesn't support us supporting each other. It wants to keep us fighting each other. This really shows you the darkness that is coming from the top of this system. So we send out prayers to everybody in Cuba and all that are going through trials and tribulation. This states that Iran struck the largest Mossad research complex in Tel Aviv with a heavy missile, completely destroying the building. Again, the Mossad, we obviously all the Mossads of the world, including the CIA and the corresponding agencies in all the major countries. They've done a lot of damage. That's the bottom line. They do it, again, to protect their people at the expense of other people. But in reality, it's just protecting themselves and protecting the power structure that has been in place. Again, the system, it has to collapse. It all has to collapse. Now, the dark side of things wants to just trap us in an even bigger dark technocracy, a technology trap. But I do think Mother Earth's going to have something to say about that. I do think that there are also benevolent beings out there that are helping and cheering us on as best as they can without direct interference.
And build on making a very important point, light workers, all of our energy matters. It all matters. We have to raise up to the best of our ability and just, continue to push for the light in whatever way we can. And we are definitely going to have setbacks and drawbacks and disappointments and frustration, but it always comes to growth. It goes to figuring out, okay, well, how can I do this better? What am I going to do that's better? But I love how everyone's supporting everyone in the room, because we need it right now. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, it absolutely is hard. And, this war, does any war really have to happen? What do we need to get to? What point to where the people of the world stop allowing it and literally close down the system, choke off the system in any way we can? Armor-piercing ammo metal is up 555% as China chokes supply. War demand surges. Tungsten used in missiles, tank rounds, armor-piercing ammunition, and some smaller caliber munitions has surged in price over the last year as China curbed exports. So China is not shipping that stuff out. They are stockpiling. So, China has not directly been involved yet in the conflict directly. That's because they're building up and they're ready for the next stage, while the U.S. is depleting its stocks, or at least apparently depleting, and the EU as well, by sending so much material and goods and spending so much money on Ukraine. Again, a war that's dragged on over 4 years now. Yeah, 2022, so 4 years. Part of that whole, what's the reason for Ukraine? It's just to drain the military supplies of the West, as well as do, create loosh and food for these demonic entities on the lower fourth density. And again, to always pad the pockets of the military-industrial complex and whatever other industries that benefit from this. This tells you, again, that this is a long ways away from being over, as they plan on going to that next stage when China gets directly involved. And, this is really, it's representative of the bigger war. The bigger war, if you go into that biblical quote where it says this is spiritual warfare, again, principalities, etc., etc., what they're really saying is that there are beings on other dimensions that are fighting battles that have an effect here. Our battles here affect other dimensions. Cindy was getting a lot of amazing info, which we're going to share with you guys on this live to a good degree, about, how the system really works and what these entities really are. This is Dr. Ben Carson, and he's sharing a story about how, like we here in the U.S., we've been really sabotaged with our food. Big time. Huge.
I have a very good friend, had a very difficult case of diabetes, very difficult to manage. He went to Italy, and within 2 weeks, it was gone. He was staying at a villa. All the fresh foods were grown right there, the dairy products, no processing. Within 2 weeks, the diabetes was gone.
And then he came back to the U.S. and he was sick immediately again. So, it's so important. And we do harp on this a lot. And a lot of times I feel like a broken record when we're talking about this. But, you got to be so careful about what you put into your body, because, it's really affecting you in more ways than one. Obviously your health, but also your consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it affects your consciousness. Everything you put in your body, that becomes part of you, and it becomes part of your frequency. And I wish we were taught at a much younger age how important food is, but we're just not. And right now it's so bad that, a lot of the candy that children are eating is just made out of petroleum. I mean, ew. And they're just eating it. And then, they get so upset if they can't have it. And that's just a world that needs to change. Unfortunately, those children are going to grow up with weak bones, weak immune systems, just weak as far as their mental clarity goes. It's not going to be that great, because that's what their body is making its frequency with. That's all they have. So, and then it's so expensive to get the good food, to get the organic food for a whole family. I just couldn't imagine trying to raise a family right now. It's so hard. I know some of you out there are doing a really wonderful job, and you're doing the work, and you're raising your children on a farm without all the things. And I just, God bless you, man. We need children like that. So, we got your back. You guys just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's this left versus right paradigm. We understand there's yin and the yang in the world. There's this whole reality operates off of duality, and opposing energies, which create a dynamic flow. It literally gives us motion and gives us, this time-space continuum. But the reality is, this is all a tool. It's really a tool. Like when you look at this little thing here, on the left and the right. So you have communist at the far extreme and then fascist on the other far extreme. But when you realize that, again, like the Rothschilds, for instance, they funded Mao. They funded Mao. They brought Mao here and literally, educated him for his job, to, again, lead the most populous nation down its path. Why in the world would the ultimate capitalists fund communism? Most people don't understand this, but it's all part of the control system. As long as you vote, why are they getting all excited about voter participation or participation in the economy? How many people are actively gainfully employed? How about people that don't have to be employed because they're doing something that's a little bit more out of the system? To me, that sounds way better than being part of the system that is really enforcing a type of economic slavery on us all.
Yeah, it's just going to take more people coming together and waking up, and we're in scary times because they're putting up all those data centers, and from what I keep hearing, they're going to give us their feedback water. That sounds so wrong on so many levels. I mean, shouldn't it be the other way around, but they're going to give us their used water? Oh, how kind.
Oh, I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's more than an insult. It's I think it's meant to be a humiliation, in so many ways. If you heard of the Law of One was a series of channelings from way back. Literally, gosh, when was that? That was in the early 70s, wasn't it? So, it was like 50 years ago now. And it had a lot of very good information. I do think there's far more that I agree with the Law of One than disagree with. There's some things that we might not agree with so much. But that's natural because, again, each one of us is a unique fractal of source, of the one infinite source. And it's supposed to be that way. Again, one size does not fit all. It's not intended to be that way. Anything that demands conformity and literally to the point of losing the essence of, the uniqueness of yourself, that's something to be completely resisted.
I totally agree.
So one of the big topics that came out of the Law of One was service to others or service to self. Basically, you could look at the whole multiverse of creation and kind of put it as, well, you're either in service to others primarily or in service to yourself as a path. So these are the two primary paths of spiritual evolution in the Law of One, representing the fundamental choice every soul must make in third density. This choice determines one's polarity, positive or negative, and shapes spiritual development through the densities of consciousness. It sounds so much like Dungeons and Dragons that we used to play back in the day without anything, that was all played on notebook just with your imagination and a dice. I don't know how many of you guys ever played it. Service to others focuses on compassion, empathy, unity, and the collective good. It involves recognizing the oneness of all beings and acting to alleviate suffering and promote healing. It requires 51%, according to the Law of One, or more polarization in service to others to qualify for the harvest, which I don't know about that one, that term, to fourth density. Aligns with higher vibrational states, access to source consciousness, and spiritual harmony. Promotes cooperation, freedom, and synergy. So when you are exuding compassion and empathy and feeling the oneness of all things, it gives expansion to your energy field. Your entire energy field will expand and grow. Conversely, service to self, centered on self-interest, control, power, and separation from others, involves manipulating or dominating others to enhance personal gain. Requires 95% or more polarization in service to self to achieve negative harvestability. Leads to isolation, disconnection from unity, and eventual energetic disintegration due to the inherent separation. Creates hierarchical, authoritarian systems often associated with competition and repression. Everything we're brought up with is again competition. Pride. Have pride in your country over all others. That automatically separates us. It automatically separates and divides us. In school, when it's skins against the shirts. And I always used to be so embarrassed to take my shirt off because when I was 10, I was a real pudgy little guy. Real pudgy little guy. So I used to dread that in gym, And again, that's division, breaking us down into teams. We can't even conceive, probably, of too many different things we could do to take away the competition against each other and to bring in cooperation between each other. When you really think about how our entire world is set up on competition. Beating somebody out for the promotion. Oh, your team didn't win. Oh, your politician didn't win. It's just everything that this world is based on.
Yeah, the competition can really, it can be heartbreaking, instead of helping your friends up, somebody, if they want to, they can really make people feel bad. And that's kind of the system that we live in. We live in that competitive system. Oh, I'm sorry, you lost. It's just not very nice. And I hope we can move away from that even more and more and more. And I know that we are in this room. You guys are so compassionate toward each other. I love it. You can literally feel the oxytocin rise in this room with people who are being kind to one another and caring and, commenting and answering other people. And, that's really when you are giving to other or becoming something bigger than yourself, that does raise the oxytocin, which definitely is the love hormone, which really makes you feel better. So, going to be part of women's groups or just part of a group where you're doing something good, or let's say you're part of a system that is, growing food for everyone else, like a community garden, that really, really raises the frequency in your area when you're working for your community.
We know that saying, it's better to give than receive, but it is ultimately. Despite the apparent duality, the Law One teaches that both paths ultimately serve the one Creator, as Ra states. To serve yourself and to serve others is a dual method of saying the same thing if you can understand the essence of the Law One. At sixth density, the paths merge in the realization of non-duality. To serve the self is to serve the all, and to serve the all is to serve the self. But while service to others is the only path leading to unity with the Creator, both paths are valid expression of free will and offer unique lessons. The key is intention. Actions driven by love, self-awareness, and balance are aligned with service to others. While actions rooted in fear, control, and exploitation is definitely a definition of service to self. True self-love is not selfish. It is essential to authentic service to others. So, yeah, the great choice. Which way will you go? Are you going to go down the left or the right, right? We know there's manipulation going on at all levels. And when you understand the densities, again, we only see the tiniest portion of that which is. Most of what is, we can't see with our own eyes. Doesn't mean it's not there, though. Of course it's there. So, there are beings in other densities that can watch us and do watch us. So when you look what's above us, right above the 3D is the lower fourth, which is it's the region where you have the dark demonic entities. You have the Archons and all that they represent. And then when you start moving up past that and forth, you start going into, instead of a hellish realm, because the hellish realms that are described in different traditions, books, visions, that's lower fourth density. That's where these archonic forces are rooted. But the reality is when you go above that, it starts heading more towards the light. And what we think of as heaven is really more of a fifth density type of experience, perhaps also just upper fourth density in the astral. Because again, when people are out of body, they've given up their body, and they're going through their process of learning the life's lessons and all. We are literally creating our entire environment in our mind with our consciousness and our will.
It speaks a lot to your soul. What your soul does here while you're on Earth is going to determine a lot of what you go through after you leave the body. All the belief systems that you find yourself in, all the things where you have expanded by helping others or assisting others, or you've created something much bigger than yourself for others. Those are all experiences that get injected into the soul. And that soul can also be traumatized, but it can also be expanded. And even though there's traumatizing on this planet while we're here, and things might feel unfair, all of that, when you get out of the body, all of that reverses. You suddenly see for yourself, like, why you went through all that trauma, why you went through all that pain, why you went through all that angst. And it then becomes a factor of growth instead of something that felt really difficult here on the 3D. So the harder things are here, and this is just not a popular answer, but the harder things are, the better off they are for your soul when you're not in this body. It brings you growth and understanding and sets you up for your next life.
Yes, absolutely. So, what we have is beings. There are beings that can see us. We can't see them in most cases. Sometimes we can if we focus in and are able to utilize the pineal gland. Then you could start to realize the manipulation that's happening on, behind the scenes in the other densities. And, this is kind of like a food chain that goes on and on and on. Many people are waking up to the fact that David Icke was right the whole time. There are reptilians amongst us, and yet there's more than one type of reptilian. There's many different. It could be an infinite number of different reptilian species. There's many, many different types of humanoid species. That's part of the awareness. How about cloned, right? We have all this coming out now from the E-files about cloning and all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, it's not crazy. It's reality. Bodies are vehicles for a 3D exploration. And most beings in the universe understand this. We're one of the few species that don't really understand the experience that we're having.
Yeah, we're like the last to know.
Yeah, the last to know, and they've kept us in the dark. So, again, Homo sapiens sapiens is not the first attempt. This is been ongoing for a long time. And yeah, I think Star Wars has done a good a good job of giving us an idea of how things really work. And then Star Trek too, that non-interference rule in Star Trek, well, it really only applies to the good guys. They're the only ones that, actually abide by things that these dark entities, they don't abide by anything because they're just in service to themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of what they do.
So when we talk about the Illuminati, well, which of the Illuminati 13 families is the good ones? Are there any good guys? No. These are all entities that are in, service to themselves. And what does that imply? Do you think people that are in service to themselves are going to be really that cooperative, that helpful with others? No, it's not in their nature. This is what we have right now is these wars ongoing. They reflect the wars in the density just above us, which we are merging into. Cindy has gotten from the guides that densities, these different densities are collapsing into each other. So as we are pushing upwards and moving up into, the 4D realm, we're first coming into the hellish realms. And this is why everything has been so nasty, especially, maybe the last, now close to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just things are moving along and it's been hard and we've been learning a lot. I think this year is such a year of unraveling and understanding and bringing about things that are very important for us to know and the ability to separate things.
So the creating of different clones for various purposes, it could be any purpose. It could just be, oh, wow, well, we just lost Netanyahu. That's okay. We have like 3 more cooking right now, incubating right now. Give me a couple of days and one of them will be ready. It's just that easy to keep the narrative going. Again, they want to shock and awe us in so many ways. They want us to make us think that like the creator of the universe is the one that's ultimately behind it. I guess in a sense, because we're living out this drama, you could infer that, but not for these little things, not, which are big things. The wars in which, millions of people ultimately die, the enslavement of planets and of people. No, it is all a learning experience as we come here and we go through these different trials and tribulations. It's all learning. It's all growth for the soul. But it doesn't have to be so hotly contested. It doesn't have to be so violent and bloody, and it doesn't have to be so cutthroat and competitive. So we know about the Draco. The Draco are those beings that don't even come from this universe. They come from another universe. They created a wormhole, perhaps with the AI system that they developed, which then enslaved them and used their own life force to empower itself. And, they are part of this ultimate AI empire, again, the Draco, that control many different species of beings. And many beings have fallen to the Draco. They've fallen into that service to self mentality. And, they've cut themselves off from the creator. So every time you do an act of goodness, every time that you go out there and instead of thinking in a fear-based way, like, oh, what if this happens, to me or to my family or whatever, how am I going to cope with this? And, that constant, how can I overcome this and that when other people are suffering out there far, far worse? When we go and we feel for the people that are suffering and try to actually help the situation, and it could just simply be by being a spark of light out in the chat room and sharing, your love, your compassion, your knowledge and wisdom with others, that definitely can do it. Being supportive of each other, that's a great thing to do. Anytime we do that, then we are in service to others. And ultimately, that is service to yourself. It truly is better to give than receive. It ultimately ends up blessing you on the karmic wheel too. So when we look at Enki and Enlil, some I think have gotten the idea that Enki's the good guy, Enlil's the bad guy, the epic battle between the gods. Well, who are they? Well, they both fell prey to the draconian AI system. You could look at them as a warrior class of Pleiadian. Again, there's a lot of different hybrids out there. And you have to realize that there's been all sorts of genetic experimentation going on throughout our universe for forever, really. So yeah, when we view them, we could look at them as our family members in some ways. Hey, Crypto Geezer, thank you so much for your support. I hope all is doing well over in the crypto world. I haven't looked in about a week.
Thank you so much, Crypto Geezer. We appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, we appreciate that. We appreciate you and being with us all these years too. It really means so much. So yeah, move with love and positive intent. And when we look at these entities, some people have got it in their mind that Enki is now the good guy because he didn't want all humans to be destroyed. But no, he is no saint. Cindy will tell you.
No, he's not nice at all.
No. So this is part of what we were getting in our meditation today. Again, Enlil's not the bad guy to Enki's good guy. They're both in service to themselves. They are competitive, jealous, vindictive people. They are real beings. They don't give a crap about any of us, really. Only if it served them. Only if it served them.
They need us for different things is all.
Yeah, it's like they need us. They look at us exactly like a slave owner on a plantation would look at his slaves. Well, I can't do this work. It takes 100 people to do this work. Better them than me. That's what they think of us.
So it's just one of them basically is getting what he wants through honey, and the other one through torture. But they both need and want what they need and want.
And again, these are part of the group that we would call fallen Pleiadians. Pleiadians ultimately is a misnomer. As us humanoids, we originated, as far as we know, in the Lyran constellation, and because of the destruction of planets and the wars, refugees had to go and settle in the Pleiades and other places, and we might actually be, in some ways, part of the Pleiades right here in some ways.
Thank you so much, Ascended Cosmic Consciousness. We do appreciate that. You say, I'm glad to catch your live show again. Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it, and it's wonderful to see you here as well. So, yeah, when we look at that big battle of Enlil versus Enki, this is, I think, part of that plan. I think they have a lot of plans. Again, I do think that you will see beings that are not us, perhaps even this year, or maybe at most next year. I think they will show, and they will introduce us to some of these beings from our mythology, and it's going to be mind-blowing to actually see them when the time comes.
It's hard to say if it's going to be in this life, but I don't think it's going to be too long. It's just depending on, how long are you going to live right now, going out. Are we going to make it another 10 years, 20 years with everything that's going on? I think they could be here within our lives if we take good care of ourselves.
Yeah, and that of course is avoiding the places where there's ongoing battles. So you see these beings, and what else do we notice? We notice that Anu and Lil Enki and Ninhursag all are wearing these horns. Now, they're not halos. It's not like halos from a glow of a saint per se, because you can see none of them actually really touch. It's not like a glowing halo. It's something a little different. And Enki, you have these little snakes floating in the air there. It's pretty interesting, and Enlil's also been labeled a storm god, but what has happened over time was that there were what we would call archetypal forces in some cases. You could look at things from an astrotheological standpoint, and again, there's a lot of references like the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles. Of course, we have 12 months, again, 12 zodiac signs and all. There are some things like the 144,000, that 144 is 12 times 12. And there's a lot of different esoteric things that these are pointing to. Ultimately, 12 could be pointing really to our DNA, 12-strand DNA, when we are in full power and when we are fully restored, which we are in the process of that going on right now. They have actual instances of people with 3 strands of DNA, and I've even heard a few cases where they found some with 4. I wouldn't be surprised if it's much more common now, because I think the change is coming rapidly now, very, 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 very rapidly. This is part of why they want to depopulate the planet to a degree, because they're afraid of a ton of activated full-force humans.
Well, it's just, we're coming online now, and we're coming online a little bit more every day. I'm in contact with a lot of you guys, and the energies that you're going through are very much reflective of the planetary alignment. So you're getting more and more and more sensitive, more awakenings, and, your emotions and your feelings are dead on, compared to the pressures that we're being faced with these other planets. So, they do not want us, fully on board with all of our energy, because then we become really difficult to handle.
Yeah, so, Sin Havoc was talking about 13, because we did have 13 lunar months, but then there was a time when the moon wasn't there. So before that, what did we really have? And when the Earth didn't have its tilt that it does now either. So what I was getting to before is like beings like Enlil and Enki took on the titles of others that were here before them. So they represent the dark matrix, the dark control matrix, and that rulership here on the planet, because there was a time when there were just really the benevolent ultra-terrestrials coming and going on the planet in regularity. And then we had this influx because we were changing the yugas and going out of the Bronze Age into a Dark Age, which enabled the darkness to start to grab control over our part of the Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very complicated, deep story, but it's one that we keep coming back to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a storm god, well, maybe not. Look at some of the symbolism. You see the half crescent moon with Enki, which is really, again, it's the same in Islam, and, it's also the same for Sin, the moon god Sin. You see, the symbolism with Enlil there too. And, it's just interesting to look at all this and the stories, but realize there's tons of different beings out there. I mean, tons and tons and tons. There are humanoid feline beings also from Lyra. You have Nordics, you have Nagas, which are different than Draco. You have the Mantids. And it gets a little complicated because there are some mantids that are in that service to self, and there are some mantids that are in service to others. Pleiadians, again, the Pleiades established and colonized their younger star system. So, they're, again, have been having to be colonized from a lot of people that are trying to escape wars going on in their own systems. There's many different beings out there. Syrians as well. I didn't see Arcturians on this one. So many different species of greys. And in the days gone by, in the Bronze Age before, we saw all sorts of beings always around us. It was common. When I look at the stories, like in the Ramayana, and they're making their way through the jungle, and they hear something going overhead. Oh, that's what's his name's ship. That's Ravana's ship. That's an Asura. That's the king of the Asuras that just took over the island of Lanka. It's right there in the story that goes back like 7,000 years. And there was no big deal. Oh, that's just him and his ship. It's a flying ship in the air. They were used to seeing these things.
Just there's so many of them, and they all kind of donated a little bit of their own DNA to create our human race that we have right now. So they all kind of have a little bit of skin in the game. There's some push, there's some pull, there's some that want us to do really good, and some that are just waiting for us to implode. But we are a very unique type of being that is made up from several others. So that's why we're getting so much attention. Our energy and our emotion is like no other. It's very, very strong. If only we can direct it the correct way, we become master manifestors. When we manifest with that energy of love and kindness and harmony, we can get anything that we need. The problem is we've been so traumatized, and that's deliberate. Because when you're traumatized, sometimes you're not, that affects your relationships. And when your relationships are affected, other things are infected. If you're traumatized, then you don't have all of that love to gather and to manifest with. So it does throw us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, where was that? Sin Havoc, I think, had mentioned before. Okay, there you go. What's your thoughts on the 5 known gates of the ice wall awakening and what was revealed in Antarctica? I think what's happening, like when we think about the ice wall and stuff, the dimensions are starting to be open. So I do think that people that are very, very high frequency, you literally may be able to go beyond the ice wall in this lifetime.
So I see the ice walls as like a mirage, like you would see out in the desert.
Yeah, it's like, again, it's a barrier that's put there to keep us from going into areas that we're not supposed to be in. So I think that's the big thing is that we're raising up in frequency. We're going to be able to go places that we haven't been able to go. There are many other civilizations on Earth, in Earth, and we're just one of them. And a lot of these beings, are still, they're here too. They've never left, but they have been outside of our visible spectrum, and they haven't been showing themselves to us during this period of, you could look at it like we've been in quarantine because the frequency here was allowed to go much, much lower. So yeah, Bohemian ceremonies summoning reptilians, they do. They absolutely do, not just in Bohemian Grove, but, that E-Man, he was around a lot of those summonings. And really, when we look at it at the higher levels, in many of the secret societies, yeah, they literally call in these other beings from other dimensions. Elena, thank you so much, dear sister. Much love. You stay warm, too, over there in Asheville.
Thank you so much, Miss Elena. Thank you.
There was more too. What else did I see there? Oh yeah, Scott was bringing up Logan's Run. Remember Logan's Run? Was it when you turned 30? You had to go into that carnival type of thing, and really what happened was people ascended on wires, but they just simply killed them. It's kind of like Made in Canada, unfortunately.
I know. Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, tons of different beings here. So, the realization that the gods of the Bible, which I think tons of people are coming to the realization now that we're talking about ultra-terrestrials. Some of them could be from inside the earth, some from under the oceans in, their cities there. And other ones from other parts of the earth, maybe on the surface, that we're not able to go to. We've been quarantined from. But yeah, there are also beings coming in from other places as well. Again, what we would take to be the dome, I don't see it as being impenetrable. I think of it as a technology. If they don't want you coming in, you don't think they could have some sort of force field type thing that just incinerates your ship or keeps you from coming in, or vice versa? What was Trump talking about with the Golden Dome? I mean, he's talking about ET technology.
Well, heck, you know, we have like electric fences for our creatures, you know, for our hens and stuff. So, you know, I think their technology is about 1 billion times better than that.
Oh, yeah. So then we go to Devas and Asuras. In Hindu mythology, I think we're doing again. I think this is the clearer representation. When we talk about the Devas, those are beings that are in service to others. When we talk about the Asuras, those are beings that are in service to self. The real interesting part, that's why I really love the Hindu stories, because I feel that they're telling it from the Bronze Age perspective. I feel like it's not, it hasn't been as tainted by the system. Everything's been tainted by the system in some ways. But the perspective with the Devas, that's service to others. Asuras, service to self. And then the Hindu tradition, again, when the Asuras come to town, they do it through warfare. They just come down and they conquer. They take over towns, they take over cities, they take over nations. They rule them themselves, and they demand first tribute. This is where so much of our traditions of giving even 10% to the church, or, again, there was this tradition back in England where if a peasant was getting married, the nobleman had the right to spend the first night with the wife. That was an insane tradition, but that actually was something that was in law back in those days. Again, the nobleman, the lord of the area, they could do anything. They could take anybody that was, a serf, and they could do kind of anything to them with no repercussions. That's very Asura-like, and that's exactly how the Asuras treated things. Where when the Devas came down, they taught us. They taught us the real science, and they taught us how to better ourselves and how the universe really, really works. What's also really interesting is it doesn't break down into like species, because there are some that would be technically classified as asuras that individual-wise will end up going into service for others and basically become a deva, so to speak. And then there's some devas that maybe could fall per se. Again, this is all about soul growth. This is soul evolution. So it's not always a straight ride up or a straight ride down. Again, many different reptilians, and they do, a lot of them do have the ability to shapeshift and to change their density, but many beings have the ability to change density. These were reptilian ships on the moon drawn by whistleblower William Tompkins, basically gave the description of what they look like, the reptilian ships up on the moon. Again, those cylindrical ones, metallic cylindrical, those are often reptilian. So then, who was Baal? Who really was Baal? Was he what we would call an Anunnaki coming to Earth? So this is the real confusing part that we're still trying to sort out and get all the details on. Some of these entities are more like Archons. Here you have Baal. This is a depiction of Baal. Again, taken to be a Canaanite storm god, recognized in other countries as well. Let's see, it looks like I don't know what he's holding. Is he holding a spear that broke off, and he's got a sword and a warhammer? Again, a storm god. This is somebody else's depiction of what Baal would look like, which does look very satanic. Yeah, you got the horns, kind of reminded me of Baphomet a little bit. What exactly is Baphomet? Well, what we got was Baphomet's basically AI. It is AI. But the thing is, all these entities that are in service to themselves are ultimately part of that, for the most part, that they're part of that draconian AI side of the coin. And yes, they are waging a war against all those who are in service to others.
Yeah, they're in it for themselves, and they're in it to control as many beings as they possibly can through some kind of trauma. So that's just not very nice at all. Oh, good. And there's Miss Elantra. Good to see you. Glad you could make it. Yeah, this guy has a lot of interesting energy about him.
Yeah, there's many different layers to this. Yeah, Baal simply does translate as Lord. It simply does. You might think it almost looks like a Thor-like being, but what we've gotten in Cindy's ability to channel and connect with these beings is that Thor is more of a fourth density. He's a being that is currently on mid to upper fourth density, and may have had a start that was a little bit rockier, but is definitely on path of service to others at this point. These are all representations. Again, some have been, these are all given as representations of Baal, but this one right here looks more like what I see Moloch usually being depicted as. So is it one and the same? Most of the time when we talk about these entities, like, is Poseidon really Shiva and really Enki? We get a definitive no, absolutely not. But I was asking Cindy about Baal and Moloch or Moloch. Is this really the same entity?
There's frequency. I check by frequency. So yeah, I check by frequency, and a lot of times they are the same, but I can still sense a separation.
What we have to realize is our consciousness forms everything. Ultimately, everything in this realm is formed by consciousness. In quantum physics, it's again, matter responds to our intention. And matter is just energy going at a slower rate of vibration than other forms of energy. And so by thinking something, we can actually bring it into being. Mind Unveiled did a 9-hour plus video on the homunculus, and about thought forms. And yeah, I do think, Spider-Man never really lived, but what we think of Spider-Man, we think of Superman, we think of, a lot of our modern mythos. And in reality, you're creating a being on fourth density that's very, very real. When people believed in these entities and gods, even if they didn't really ever exist in the beginning, they do, because belief makes them real.
Belief makes them very real, and with Baal, it was interesting because he said he has many souls. When you ask if he has one, he says, no, I have many. And those are the beings that he can control, and he's very proud of that.
Yeah, it was interesting because Cindy was able to see this entity very easily, which some of them not so easy. Some of them hide themselves very well. And, you always want to be careful when you're poking, because these things are dark, very, very dark.
There's a difference in how you connect. There's the stand back and you just look at their field without necessarily connecting to them. And that's what I did, because I know how to stand back from that frequency, not let it affect me, but I can still read it.
So Bob says, why do humans always need to worship entities or lords? Because it's literally been programmed into our DNA. And that is the truth. It's literally programmed in our DNA.
It's an urge. It's an instinct. And yeah, it's programmed.
It is. It's totally programmed. So yeah, it is. It's something I think that we need to overcome, because they've again turned off so many different, DNA sections, different genes, and they have also made sure that certain ones were in there, and the urge to worship is in there. Subservience is in there. They want, again, just like Rockefeller said, I don't want you all to be, brilliant minds. No, I don't need you thinking. I just need you working. That's it. Just do the work, and that's it. Yahweh is Baal. Well, when we looked at, is Yahweh Baal? Are they one and the same? Or are they literally adversaries, as is portrayed in much of the scripture? Oh, Elantra, thank you very much. Much love, Elantra.
Thank you so much, Elantra. Big hugs.
So is Yahweh really Baal, or are they in competition? It was interesting because the answer was immediate and very, very strong.
Yeah, definitely. There, it was immediate and it was very strong. And those are just
Which Yahweh and Baal are like big time competitors.
huge competitors. They tend to they compete so badly that they do not even like to bump each other's heads. So they just as soon stay away from each other because they could damage each other.
But they are always competing. That was immediate. The answer Cindy got was like every moment of every day, these two are at odds with each other, trying to get humans, again, to give their energy and their focus to them.
It's an attention grab. It's definitely an attention grab. And these are two beings that, if they do actually come together to bump heads, there's going to be a problem. So they work around each other, but against each other. It's a very complicated relationship that I picked up. And, but they both have like the same frequency. If you could imagine like two magnets that are like pushing each other apart, that's kind of what they are, but they're in the same space, and it can be very uncomfortable.
And both of them reside in the same place, which is the lower fourth density. So, Yahweh is not light love and fluffy compassion. No, these are both what we could consider archons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would say. They have that archon, the archon feeling.
And that's the thing to get across. And that's what we see in this world today. Is Putin a great guy? Is he all, sweetness and kindness and cuddles? No. Is Xi? No. Is Trump? No. Was Biden? No. These are all beings that are in service to themselves, and they constantly fight and argue and war with each other.
Right, Frankie? They do sound like politicians, don't they? Huh? As above, so below.
This is it. Yeah, they are. So really what we see is here in this realm is representative of like the battle between Yahweh and Baal. So who's really the good guy? None of these, none of the above. This is where I just felt like even if that title was going to get a lot of people to not look at this video, it really is the video. And it's not a war of good versus evil, because they don't care what side you pick. As long as you pick a side, you're feeding them. And you're feeding their egos. And these beings have tremendous egos.
Yeah, I mean, it's like flipped upside down. So, with us, we do have our ego, but we also have soul to reconcile and spirit to reconcile that. But these guys have just so much ego. It's like it's a must win. I absolutely must win. And they'll harm themselves trying to.
Yeah, even again, beings on the same side. We've seen, if you're familiar with any of your ancient Roman history, there was often the case that people that were family to the Caesar, would end up being poisoned. And we talked about Constantine. He put his own son to death because he was worried that someone was going to usurp him, and he put to death his first wife. That's exactly what these beings are like. These are, I guess Archon is probably the best way to put it. I think the Gnostics had it right. And so, obviously siding for one of the Archons is not going to be siding for the good guys, because they're all dark, and they're all basically destructive. And, it's just ego, and it's all about controlling the most souls. They really do compete in trying to get the most human souls behind them to actually utilize as an energy source.
So the best thing to do is to not let them. Your temple is critical to keep that clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the real Yeshua is pure love and forgiveness and kindness and compassion. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing like these entities. So yeah, what you saw was real, and it is talking about the jealousness. Like, I am a jealous God. They're both jealous gods. Yahweh and Baal are both jealous. I would think Archon is a better word. Yes, absolutely. Baal is, again, it means Lord. It's a generic term, for some sort of ruler, somebody that's in charge, somebody that possesses something like a land. So yeah, the Canaanites and everybody, there was no monotheism. Monotheism is it's a construct that came about to try to confuse humanity, because what we're talking about are really ultra-terrestrials for the most part, and some beings that are more of a negative archetype, I guess, if you want to use the Archons. What are Archons? They're kind of like archetypal forces, but like a negative polarity archetypal force.
Mm-hmm. That's what I would say too.
Well, thank you for agreeing. And Yahweh, again, he had a consort, Asherah. Asherah was worshipped everywhere. And even when you go and you look into some of the Old Testament, you'll see them. Deuteronomy 16:21, when you make an altar for the Lord your God, because there's different gods, and which one do you serve? Do not put beside it a wooden symbol of the goddess Asherah, right? Because they were starting to push the idea of monotheism in order to confuse us into understanding, what was the reality behind these different beings. Baal, god of thunder, definitely not Thor. A chief rival of Yahweh. Yeah, they're always competing. And, this horrible thing, which has been such a huge topic, Moloch, Moloch, again, these are archonic energies. These are part of the architects of the dark matrix. The dark matrix. So, again, yeah, if you're in service to light and in service to others, then you're definitely not going to really have anything to do with them.
No, you're not.
Yep, absolutely. And then this is getting into some of the different nomenclature, talking about how many times different terms have been used. As you see, the Baalim of the Semitic peoples, Baal Yahweh of Israel, Baal Yahweh Perazim, and it gives you the different verses which are using these terms, like 2 Samuel 5:20, Baal Shamash of Moab, Numbers 21, Baal Shamash of Peor. Another from the book of Numbers, Baal Milcom, Baal Melkert, Baal Hadad, different areas, Syria and others. Baal Ramon of Damascus. So, again, this is naming different lords. Baal Dagon of Philistia. Yes, Dagon, the fish god. Bel Marduk. Bel Marduk of Babylon. So, Beliah means Baal is Yahweh. Interesting, isn't it? Not Baal means owner, proprietor. Could be used as husband, married to. It could also just mean those that are in possession of, in some cases, human souls.
Mm-hmm. It's yucky.
That's what they're trying to do, So these are all negative entities. And again, a lot of the Gnostics came to the conclusion that Jehovah, Yahweh, Allah is really the demiurge. Well, yeah, again, these are together the Archons. These are the Archons. These are the ones, the frauds, the imposters, that are all about basically manipulating people through the worst ways possible, through, again, how did they get to the politicians? Now, I think it was Cindy and her channeling that got that E-Man, the Epstein guy. He was known in certain circles as the hunter of lords. So you could literally say he was the hunter of Baals. When you think about it using that terminology, what does that mean? I think it, again, means that this is showing the reference to the layers of the system. Yeah, there's a lot of layers to this. You have these gigantic, dark, conscious entities that have many other beings under their control. And when we look to like individual Anunnaki like Enlil and Enki, and then we look to different beings like the Draco and the Jinn, they're all different. The Jinn, I do think, are more like these negative inclined fire elementals that are often used by the dark side to carry out very dark acts. This, by the way, is the earliest representation of Yahweh right here, with his Asherah in the background. So Asherah is sitting on the chair in the background. That's his counterpart. She's crocheting a blanket, and he doesn't have any pants on. Yeah, weird.
It's just a weird relationship, but that's what they do.
Yeah, it's a very dark, twisted thing. Baal in Israel, originally peaceful coexistence of Yahwehism and Baalism, later rejected and later at like just war with each other. Again, when you look to it, it's well known. If you've read the scripture in Hebrew, you understand that we're never talking about just one entity as being one of a type. There's many different beings involved. And, again, when it says Yahweh is your Elohim, Yahweh is your mighty one. That's the one that you serve. You serve that entity, not this entity. But they're all of a dark persuasion. They are all part of that nasty archonic matrix. El is widely regarded as the father of Baal in Canaanite mythology. Again, a lot of things get pushed together with some of the legends and myths that preceded even these entities coming in. It is a tangled, confused web that they hope that you'll never figure it out. But you can see, the symbol for Islam is the same as the symbol, that's associated with Baal as well. Yeah, and then we go to the other side of things. This is talking about the kingdom of Rama. Who was Rama? Rama is taken to be an incarnation of Vishnu, who is the preserver of the universe. But when you look at it, what does that really mean? I do think it means that he is somebody that's in service to others and understands. He's like a prototype of a perfect king that's still flawless and still made bad decisions at times. And yet, what did he do despite it all? He always persevered, and no matter how bad things got to look, he would never go in service to himself. He would never bail out on everybody else. He just couldn't do it. He always had to do what he thought was right, irregardless of the cost.
And when it comes to things like that, that's usually those people are not super popular in their time. They're not really popular until times have gone by, and then people look back and said, wow, despite everything that person was up against, they persevered, and then they become big.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look again, we're talking about Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. These civilizations were existing in a manner that is pre-Kali Yuga. They had no central authority. There were no social classes. The whole idea of social classes is basically an archonic concept, and ultimately also Anunnaki brought to us. So yeah, you didn't have different social classes. There wasn't any of that stigma. They had no central government. The people worked together and somehow they coexisted. There was no military class either. They lived peacefully, and they were totally wiped out by the Anunnakian system as it came through. But these people were living, again, in accordance with service to others. And when you look at Rama and also Krishna, this is what we're looking at. But there are those that believe that Rama came from inner earth. There are different portions of the story that say that he actually came from the civilization that was inside the earth. Agartha, is one of those words that's used for the inner earth civilizations. And he came to the surface in order to help and guide us at a point in time when the Yuga was starting to descend. Now, with Rama, that was in the Silver Age going into the Bronze Age. And then Vishnu came exactly one more cycle of the Yugas later at the very end of the Bronze Age. And when Vishnu left, that was the beginning of the Kali Yuga. Again, Vishnu is another being that I would take to be more of like one of those ultra-terrestrials that was living amongst us. In some of the mythology, too, it does talk about Rama, again, going back to where he was, originally from inside the earth. And then some legends talk about Krishna ascending up into the skies, and leaving behind this reality and his physical body. And so what we also see is depictions of beings that are very intelligent, like monkey people, and a lot of other types of beings in flying cities too. This is all going back to a different age. Rama's departure to heaven is he was thought to be the prototypical good king with, truly compassion in mind and service to others. Always would do whatever he could do to make life better for others. And we should always be striving, in my mind, to be doing that.
And always spend time with your four-legged angels.
Yeah, and one of the trick I did when I was doing gardening with some of my other dogs, I would always, get them going and doing their holes too. I would pretend that there's something buried down there. Go get it, go get it, go get it. And they would dig the holes for me, then I'd put the plant in.
It was a really great night, you guys. Thanks for all of your support and supporting each other too. I love to see that. And special thanks and special dings are going to go to all of you, plus Vildan, Crypto, Ascended Cosmic Consciousness, Elena, Diana, Elantra. Thank you so much. So let's do some dings and hold the world in a peaceful place for everyone who needs it. And hopefully we can bring more and more people together to just make the world a better place. So here we go. You guys are amazing.
Much love as always. Loka samasta suki no bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my thoughts, words, actions, and deeds contribute to that happiness and freedom. Thank you guys so much. Pleasant dreams. Namaste.